You today.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for meeting with me again so we can have another discussion.
It's wonderful, my pleasure. So, yeah, I think we need to do this.
Yes. So today, what I wanted to start out talking about is the Bible verse about enter through the narrow gate, because I think there are a couple important points about that verse. And like we've said before, reading the Bible is a lot like interpreting a dream, that there's metaphor and different language, and um, just thought we could discuss that today.
Definitely, yes. Right. As an introduction, right? That is exactly it. That there has been there are metaphors, that of the true messages, of course, not so
Literal.
not right, but also, it doesn't mean that everything that, survived the Bible is, completely right. But I think also that the main messages, were sort of left because maybe, people couldn't fully decode them,
Yes.
so right. So it does, it's very important to try to speak about these codes, and as you said, well, this is one of the big ones, actually, the narrow
Yes.
road.
Yes. And to your point of that some things left in are correct, but it's like everything, that it's not all or nothing. It's not everything in the Bible is wrong, or everything is incorrect, or everything is made up, but it's also not everything's in there and everything's true. And that's so hard for us to digest, because we have been so deeply conditioned and programmed to see everything black and white and split everything, which is the gist of the narrow gate of bringing them back together.
That's very well said. Exactly, the very Bible itself exactly is, people would go in an all or nothing, you know or saying, it's completely fabricated, or engineered, and only lies. Or you would have the other side that would too
Believe
much.
everything.
Exactly. But it's
And it's
exactly that mid that center between the two extremes that is indeed the narrow.
and maybe that is the best way to hide everything in plain sight, is to have it not all or nothing, because it can be sitting right there, the truth, but we can't see it because we see it in all or nothing terms.
Exactly. Exactly. And as a matter of fact, that all or nothing state of mind is the very basis of mind control. It is the very basis of of controlling the mind and keeping it, outside of itself, and hiding, exactly, and hiding. There's no better way than. But even to a certain extent, it was hidden. But I think, or even to a certain extent, the very engineers, of this checkered board, kind of a mind, I think literally people, I think literally people have not been able to decode it until now, really, the essence of it, you
Yes.
know. Yeah, I think literally they haven't been able to because it's so profound, to fully, get like the narrow road is, we would call it the journey inward, which is it would take, probably the whole of the Jungian effort, to take us up to a point which is now to be able to fully comprehend the inward journey, the journey inward, which is in the narrow and cramped road, which Jesus was referring to.
Yes.
So that's why, right, that's why I think it's maybe only at this time that we would fully be able to fully get to the, as we spoke in the last conversation, even the Jungians were, that came after Jung, were sort of, led into a trap. You know what I mean? So imagine, so it would take up to this time, I guess, that we could truly, get to the full meaning of all of the messages, the key messages in the
Yes.
Bible.
Yes. And I wanted to also say something. The full verse is, and I'll post it when we make the video, but strive to enter the narrow gate. For many, I say to you, will seek to enter and will not be able. And so the other point about this is that it is a solitary journey for each individual, that we have to do the work ourselves individually. And that's something that is difficult, because we have to break away from the herd. But if the herd is all going in the wrong direction, we have to be willing to break away from them to do this journey ourselves. And that's really scary, because it is, we derive so much meaning from our families or the social groupings around us, and it's again something so foreign, that this is an individual journey, and it's interior, it's inside my own mind. And again, that's very, very different from what our daily life and focus has been.
Right. Right. Yes, that's the core of it, because the journey inward, as I think von Franz has also referred to it as the way of the dream, and it was really referring to a going inward, becoming more aware of our inwardness, of who we are, and we know from projections that projections basically not only attach us to others in a toxic way, but it also separates, so it creates an attachment because of feeling separate. So it's not a real connection. And then, as you said, we so when we're projecting, we're basically experiencing ourselves fully outside of ourselves,
Yeah.
So
externally, externally, but then not seeing that that's what we're
exactly
seeing.
Right. We don't see it as externally. We truly, honest to God, believe that. Yeah, we believe that our feeling. We don't say this lightly. We know it's very, very dramatic and difficult. But it is what it is, in the sense that what we I feel lonely. I feel alone, I feel rejected, people will not take that inward. They will
Mm.
always sort of, project that onto
Blame the
someone
other.
else.
Yes.
Yes, always, always. But then this journey inward, which is the narrow way in, is the beginning, is starting to see, that that's my feeling. I
Oh,
need to, so the first,
hold on. I
yeah,
have
go
to
ahead.
interrupt. There are two deer right outside my window looking up.
Oh, wow.
Oh, they're walking. They're walking this way. Oh,
Wow.
they're.
That's nice.
It's
That's cool.
It's literally looking right at me, walking towards me.
Try to get some pictures
Okay.
for the video. Wow.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I interrupted. I
No,
had to say that.
right. No, that's wonderful, because it's all about that. The synchronistic pop-ups, which always can, sort of help us connect to what, we're doing in the moment. But so the narrow road that Jesus was, basically announcing and bringing to us, was that it starts with, right, it starts with the one of the ways then is, the ability to see the projections, and to feel our feelings inwardly, because we don't feel them inward. As long as you want to blame someone for you feeling lonely or alone, you cannot feel that feeling in the right way. So, that journey inward is a very, and as you said, it's a narrow, very narrow way, because, you cannot do it with via others, because as what I just said about projections, if you need to take all of them back. And the difference with this approach and the Eastern is that we don't see the projection as an illusion, in the sense of, meditation, that, it's totally not. We see it as parts of ourselves that we are externalizing.
Yes.
That's the core of the difference. So that we need to take that, we need to be able to realize that, we are projecting that. It's inside of us. So we need to go inward. That's like the first level inward, where you can try to feel your feelings inwardly. And, for instance, if I'm feeling inferior or not good enough, I will tend to see that in terms of the other things. They're all
Mm-hmm.
that. Oh, you think you're all that, and this, and no. It's basically, I am feeling, not good enough, but then I will sort of project the other as being, the source
Putting me
of
down.
that. Yes. So it's very difficult to really make that journey inward without the many, many pitfalls, in doing that.
It is, and also though projections in and of themselves aren't bad, or something that we need to try not to do, because then if we look at it that way, then we're just cutting things off because we don't want to project. So projections aren't bad. We just need to see that that's what it is, and
Yes.
stop believing that it's reality.
Yes. And see that it's a part of us that we don't want to feel within ourselves, and that will also give us a lot of compassion and sensitivity towards others' projections on us. Whereas, because that's also the basis of gaslighting, where you make somebody, own your projection, and which, so others projecting on us can be quite painful. And but by seeing what you just said, we can also be more sensitive, and realize, okay, it's not really me they are saying that about, but it's, a part of themselves that was traumatized and, hurt
Yes.
and cut
And then
off.
And then when we see it in ourselves, we can see it when someone else is doing to us, which is the only way to disentangle from that.
Exactly. Exactly. Because you see, and that's the right word, because the journey inward is a disentangling from, the
Attachment.
magnetic or toxic attachments. Exactly. I call it the push and the pull, of I'm either pushing people away from me, or I am pulling them too much because I am, rejecting them. And it's the, but right. So this is a hell of a journey, because we, at the core of the journey, which is, what the narrow is also what was referred to as the eye of the needle. At the core of the journey is where we become fully self-sovereign regarding our feelings, meaning, so in the beginning you would feel, like, I give you an example, you feel all, low and rejected and not worthy or dismissed or replaceable, or any amount of that. But the idea would be that you need to then eventually even start to see how you are self-generating those feelings, whereas normally you would really feel that it's coming from the surrounding, it's coming from
Mm-hmm.
what someone is doing to me. It's very difficult, because obviously we're all coming out of real trauma. So this does not exclude, that we were traumatized for real. But I'm saying that the journey inward, the promise of it, this is why I think the eye of the needle means, the narrow way means that we, it's the way into heaven. Because when you're able to disentangle from your surroundings, in which where you project all of your, undealt with stuff, you become more and more conscious, of that you are generating. Like, for instance, if I feel low and depressed and rejected, normally one would go, to somebody around them and try to play that out. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Get the other to do that to them. And then you can. But when you are able to sort of sit with those feelings and realize where they are coming from, and that we are generating that. That's a difficult thing, but it's this it brings you closer to a state of self sovereignty. That's also, Meredith, what the scripture says: "Be still and know that I am God." The "be still" means that once I can go inward and realize, that I am generating my feelings, and that brings us to a deeper stillness, a deeper sense of peace inward,
Yes.
where we disentangle from the surroundings, and that, when it says "be still and know I am God," it's the same saying as eye of the needle. It means that when you go through the eye of the needle, meaning when you go inward, off the checkerboard mind, that's where God is waiting on us.
Yes. And the be still is to stop fighting against yourself and your shadow and everything, because if the true self is the core, the center of us inside, how can we reach there, which is the connection to God? How can we reach there if we're fighting every step of the way? If every time I see a projection of mine out there, I'm fighting it or hating it, or if I'm feeling something and fighting it and hating and all of this fighting, there is no stillness. But how can I expect to go deeper inward if I'm not willing to look at those parts of me in the outer layers?
Exactly. And but that's another key notion in all of this, what you just said. That the self-sabotage is the moment we are, not containing our opposites inward. We externalize, we project, we play it out, we make people do it. So we're not saying here that others don't have all kinds of feelings and emotions towards us and do things, but we're saying that we're able to become self-sovereign when it comes to our emotional uh, economy, if you want to call it like that. You know what I mean? It just means, but right, that means that there is a level of harmony or agreement within the opposites, the shadow and its opposition.
And also owning our part in it. If it's always everybody around me that's the problem, well, what am I doing to either be in this situation or to attract these people into my life? Is it
Exactly.
just solely all the other people? I have to look at my involvement in that, and that's difficult because it's much easier to blame somebody out there than to own that I'm making this choice and I'm drawing them in and I'm creating this. That's difficult to do, but necessary.
Yeah, because that is again, that's another piece of the puzzle, because that is the whole point of realizing how we are self-generating our feelings, and how we are experiencing things in terms of the state we are in. That is already the inward state. For instance, which goes along with what you just said, seeing our role in what is happening. We know that when we go into the too close or observation problem state, you don't see, that your role in what you are creating, but not even seeing.
Well,
Imagine when you can. Sorry, go
well,
ahead.
sorry, but it's not, again, like I said about projection in and of itself isn't bad, but we need to see that it's projection. The same with our involvement. It's we don't see it, but we don't want to see it. That's the problem.
Exactly. Because that's the point of the inward journey, the narrow, is that it requires, it's going inside out with our whole everything, the whole hardware, seeing what is my role in this, how am I co-creating this with others, how what is my how am I generating my depression, how am I self-generating my depression. People would say, no, it's a chemical imbalance, or it's, I lost my
Yes.
job and I
Or
lost,
hereditary.
yeah, oh,
Genetic.
genetic. That's become the doctrine in medical school.
Yes.
If you don't accept the genetic explanation for everything almost, but all of that is the lockdown. So I think these teachings came to sort of free us from the lockdown, which is when you feel that when you're giving the outer world all of the power over you, because when you blame, you give the other the
Yes.
power.
Yes.
It's not saying that. Somebody asked me today, a little while ago, they said, okay, a lot of places are, have gone into deep crisis. The Aruba has gone into very big crisis, because Aruba has, its economy is completely dependent on tourism, which is a symptom also of a lack of self. It's an economy that is completely external. If nothing it's outside in. But then they said, the question was, Dimitri, can Aruba survive this? And the answer to that was, it's not really if Aruba can survive this. It's if we can psychologically realize, that we are able to be self-sovereign in how we are going to navigate it. You know what I'm saying? Because the beauty of this is that,
So it's not if, it's how. How can we survive this? Because even asking if,
thank you,
there's a supposition that we can't.
thank you, and that's the mind that Jesus was, trying. What was brought was this incredible teaching to make us fully self-sovereign from the surroundings. The whole, at the core of it was that what you believe, you see.
Mm.
While science is all about what you see, you believe, which is
Yes.
which
Proof.
is which, yeah, it's a lockdown institution. It's a the very thing of science is to make you
Projection.
believe. It's projection, because if you say your depression is caused by a chemical imbalance, you're in a lot of trouble, because it means that you are not self-generating it, but something outside of your mind, because they don't see the chemical process in your brain as being generated by the mind. They
Yes.
think the mind is being generated by the chemicals.
Yes. Or even genetic. If you say, oh, your grandfather had this and your father, and now you're going to have this, it sets it up in your mind to then create that. And
Exactly.
you do. And then they turn around and say, see, it's genetic. Well, maybe it's being told that and believing that and feeding that and then creating it, but not knowing that and not owning that.
That, and that's why at the core of the narrow, it's narrow in terms of, the going inward. It's a solitary journey up to self. At the level of self, you will connect to other
Collective.
self-sovereign. Exactly. You
It's
will.
collective, but then the individual self can withstand the collective state without being swallowed up by it. But if there is no individual, they just get, it's like a bowl of soup.
Exactly. And that's why at the level of the selves, when we know those of us that do conquer and are victorious in finding that inward way to the self, because that's the promise. The self is the divine core. Then it becomes what we call a walking together alone, because it's together, but it's alone, because the alone part, what
All
it
one.
means is exactly, and it means that I'm not, entangling myself with others in terms of gaslighting them to carry my
Well,
projections or my shadow.
yes. Well, if you're not self-sovereign and not in that state where you're containing your projections, you need other people like a drug, because you need someone to either blame, you need someone to project on, you need someone to play it out externally. But when you're self-sovereign, it doesn't mean you don't have relationships with others, but it's not that drug, that need, you know?
Exactly. No, but that's the whole thing. What comes out of that, which is called the marriage of the Lamb, is a deep connectivity between the selves, which are the self-sovereign beings, who have who have graduated from that stairway, because the journey inward, we have discussed it in the last conversation as a stairway. That's the
Mm-hmm.
stairway to heaven. That's the stairway to heaven. It's the oldest. It's in the Old Testament as the ladder of Jacob and all of that. It's all there. And once I think we who have sort of uh, pieced it all together, which cannot, in some academic sense, it can only
Yes.
be seen with, once you've walked that narrow road, and be, and achieve to disentangle yourself from. And Meredith, maybe it's important to say this: the cell, you disentangle from the disconnect to others, because once you go deeply into narrow stairway, you come out with what we call deep connectivity to others. So it's not like
Mm-hmm.
this journey inward is not an inward as in removed from the other. It is an inward into your soul and core.
Yes.
And inside of because what you will see is that you will be able to be much more loving and close and compassionate, but also angry. People don't, because anger also is a very important emotion. So don't get me wrong if I say compassionate, but also what I call then righteous anger. But you come out with much more connection. So it's not
Yes.
like it's you're separating yourself from others.
Yes, but there has to be that first breakaway from the herd, because the herd immunity and the herd mind isn't going up the stairway of heaven.
Totally. And that's the frightening thing of the whole herd immunity notion. Those of us who know that true immunity it rests at the core of individuality. The individual, the word even comes from the indivisible, the
Yes.
indivisible, the individual, breaking away from that hive mind and that collective this dissolving or symbiosis into the others. That's the basis of true immunity. This is why the
Yes.
herd immunity idea is just completely,
It's the
it's
blind
actually,
leading the blind.
yes, you know it's totally off because they don't it is very much in keeping with the scientific lockdown, because these are scientific notions. But according to Carl Jung, the herd, there could never be, the herd is the loss of immunity.
Yes. Lo- and loss of the individual self. There is no individual in a herd. It's just one big nameless, faceless group.
And that's where you lose your shielding. That's where the immunity means shielding, because you go into this solution with the outside, meaning you lose self. It's self loss, you know and
Yes.
and right, and that's where actually the defenses are lost, and we are opened up to parasitic intrusions. And I've been seeing many, many, many dreams lately that there's like been a shift where people who are not doing the shadow work and who are not sort of able to contain and all of that have gone a lot closer to that upside down realm. Where these a parasitic entity is simply where you are drained from your blood.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so the herd immunity is really driving people deeper and deeper into this symbiosis with the parasitic and with the AI, because what we've discussed last time is that the AI means that we become like a laptop. We become,
Mm-hmm.
it's the full inverse of the inward journey or the narrow road to self,
Because
because it means
everything's outward.
exactly, there is no inward for a computer, a laptop, you know?
Everything's outward. All right. So just to wrap things up here, the narrow gate is one that we must embark on alone, but we do find connection in our true self, in our true purpose, and meaning and can connect to others then in a whole fashion, not as an attachment or as a drug. And when Jesus said, pick up your cross and follow me, he didn't say pick up your cross and give it to someone else to carry. He didn't say pick up your cross and give it to him to carry. He said pick up your own cross and carry it, and we each have to be willing to do that.
Yes, and I've said once that the very church, which is obviously not the real thing, because it excluded the women, the feminine, from any position of relevance and all of that, but what it did do, Meredith, was teach people how to put their shadow or cross on others, and especially on Jesus and the apostles. It turned, Jesus will take it all away from you, and the apostles will, it's a teaching in not to carry your own cross. It's a teaching. It's a teaching. It's the trail. If the inward journey is the trail of the narrow, that is the trail to what we've called the birth of the anti-selves, meaning a emptied out laptop sort of zombie version. 2 days ago, a young lady who was in the local, who is being heavily medicated locally. They took about 50% of the pills away. At a certain point, she was getting, I think, 12 to 15 pills a day. Mm-hmm. And she said it spontaneously. She said this. She said, I am reanimating. I am coming back to life.
Wow.
Can you imagine that? So this stuff literally, it's the trail to a zombie state, which we have understood, as being that laptop, where you're emptied out and you're only looking at everything outside of you,
and filled with programs which aren't your own thoughts, which aren't coming from inside at all. It's coming externally.
And the frightening part of the word program is what we're seeing in the dreams as being AI is the self-driving car, the self-driving airplanes, how we've even seen how houses that are able to reconstruct themselves. It's like an automatic process that completely bypasses the person, the individual.
It's just an empty shell.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this discussion. I thoroughly enjoy our talk, so thank you.
Thank you very much also, Meredith. And I think, many people just in the closing have said that they, that it's very valuable to them, to hear, our discussions. And as I said last time, it's wonderful because, you have done the work, fully and completely. And, and I have been my whole life, at this. So then, it gives, it really provides the platform for a conversation about, the shadow and all of its ramifications, and the projection. Yes. And so, in a way that I think is very, people really are enjoying it.
Oh, well, good. It's the same message and the same work, but it's two different people with two different lives and experiences and ways of expressing what they've learned in that process. So I think it is valuable just to hear different perspectives and to say it a different way that maybe you hadn't thought of or someone hadn't heard. So I appreciate these conversations and hope we can continue this. All right.
Thank you very much. All right.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.